Good evening and welcome. Close your eyes and feel the air grow calm around you. Tonight, we rise above the world of mortals into the realm of clouds, thunder, and ancient power. This is the mythology sleep story of Zeus, the king of the Greek gods, ruler of Olympus, and master of the sky and lightning. In this peaceful journey, you will hear tales of divine rule, ancient myths whispered by the wind, and the quiet strength of a god who shaped the fate of gods and men alike. This story is designed to help you relax, to slow your thoughts, and gently guide you into sleep. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight, and what time is it for you? Now, take a slow breath in and a gentle breath out. Let the noise of the day fade away and allow the clouds to carry you upward into the story of Zeus. The war that reshaped existence did not end with celebration. When the Titans finally fell and the sky was claimed, the universe did not erupt in triumph. Instead, there was silence. A deep, unsettling stillness spread across the cosmos, as if the world itself was waiting to see what kind of ruler would now sit upon the highest throne. Olympus stood intact, untouched by the ruin below. The mountain rose above clouds and memory, gleaming as a symbol of victory. Zeus was already king. His rule was not new, not tentative, and not questioned in that moment. The battle had decided that. But victory has a way of revealing truths that war conceals. And what followed the fall of the Titans was not peace, but tension. The gods gathered in a world forever changed. The old order, ruled by brute force and inevitability, had been shattered. In its place stood something unfamiliar, a kingdom governed by will, authority, and fear. Zeus did not inherit a calm realm. He inherited survivors. Every god who stood on Olympus after the war carried memory, ambition, and resentment. They had fought together, but they did not trust one another. For Zeus, the throne was not a reward. It was a responsibility forged in violence. Power, once seized, demanded constant proof. The sky responded to his presence, thunder bending to his command. Yet even that authority carried weight. To rule the heavens was to rule instability itself. The silence after the war revealed a truth few dared to speak. The Titans were gone, but the threat of chaos was not. It had simply changed shape. Where once there were towering enemies, now there were whispers. Glances exchanged between gods. Quiet calculations. Olympus was not a sanctuary. It was a court. Zeus understood this instinctively. The king of the gods did not rule from ignorance. He ruled from awareness. Every alliance was temporary, every loyalty conditional. Immortality did not erase ambition, it sharpened it. And the longer the gods lived, the more time they had to desire what they did not possess. The world below watched unknowingly. Mortals felt the aftershocks of divine war through altered skies and restless seas, but they did not understand its cause. To them, the storm clouds were simply storms. They could not see that the heavens themselves were adjusting to a new authority. Rivers changed their course. Seasons felt harsher. Nature responded before humanity ever could. Order had been declared, but order is fragile in its infancy. Zeus stood at the center of it, not as a benevolent guardian, but as a necessary force. The universe did not need kindness, it needed stability. And stability, in the aftermath of war, is rarely gentle. The gods began to test boundaries almost immediately. Small defiance hid behind ceremony, pride surfaced in subtle challenges. Words were chosen carefully, respect offered publicly, and questioned privately. Olympus became a place where every gesture carried meaning and every silence suggested intent. Even the sky itself seemed restless. Storms gathered without warning. Thunder rolled longer than before. These were not accidents, but reminders. Zeus ruled not through persuasion, but presence. His power was visible, undeniable, and always waiting to be unleashed. Beneath the grandeur of Olympus, fear quietly took root. Not fear of titans returning, but fear of imbalance. Fear that one misstep could fracture the fragile order holding the gods together. Fear that power concentrated in one hand could invite rebellion in another. The gods had won the war, but they had not learned peace. Victory left questions unanswered. Who decides justice among immortals? Who watches the watcher? And what happens when authority outlives trust? What followed was not an era of harmony, but an age of control. Zeus would shape the cosmos not through consensus, but through certainty. Laws would be enforced. Oaths would be bound by consequence. Fear would become a language every god understood, spoken without words. With the Titans defeated and the echoes of war fading into memory, the universe faced a problem it had never encountered before. Power was no longer scattered among ancient forces. It was concentrated, and concentration demanded structure. The first act of Zeus's reign was not thunder or punishment, but division. The cosmos itself was reorganized, not out of generosity, but necessity. The sky, the sea, and the underworld could not be ruled as one. No single domain could bear the weight of absolute authority without collapsing into chaos. Order required boundaries, even among gods. The heavens were claimed by Zeus, not through ceremony, but through consensus born of inevitability. The sky had answered him during the war. Lightning had obeyed his will. Storms had bent in his presence. No other god contested this claim, because none could. The sky was not merely a throne. It was an extension of power itself. The seas were granted to Poseidon. Vast, unpredictable, and violently alive, the ocean suited him. Yet this was not a gift free of tension. Poseidon accepted his domain, but not without resentment. The sea touches every shore, and Poseidon never forgot how close he stood to the sky. His loyalty was genuine, but never absolute. The underworld fell to Hades, silent, isolated, permanent. Unlike his brothers, Hades did not seek admiration or dominance. He accepted his realm with grim understanding. Death needed a ruler untouched by vanity. Still, the distance between the underworld and Olympus was not merely physical. It was political. Separation bred independence, and independence bred unease. This division of realms formed the illusion of balance. To mortals, it would later be remembered as harmony. To the gods, it was understood as containment. Each brother held power enough to rule his domain, but not enough to challenge the whole. Zeus remained above them all, not just in elevation, but in authority. Yet even this structure carried cracks. The gods of Olympus were not soldiers awaiting orders. They were immortals shaped by ego, memory, and desire. Athena's wisdom did not make her passive. Ares' violence did not make him obedient. Apollo's light did not soften his pride. Each god believed their domain essential. Each believed themselves indispensable. Zeus presided over them not as a father, but as a judge. Olympus became a place of councils and confrontations, where disputes were settled not by affection, but by decree. Justice was spoken from above, and disagreement was tolerated only until it threatened order. The laws of the cosmos began to take form. Oaths sworn by gods became binding forces. Promises carried consequence. The sky itself bore witness, and punishment followed those who broke sacred bonds. This was not morality, it was control. And control, once established, became the foundation of peace. Below Olympus, the world adjusted in silence. Rivers followed new paths. Winds changed their temper. The seasons gained rhythm. Mortals felt these shifts without understanding them. They prayed instinctively, sensing that unseen forces now governed their fate with intention rather than impulse. But intention does not equal mercy. The new order demanded sacrifice. Freedom among gods diminished. Where once strength alone defined dominance, now authority defined survival. The gods learned restraint, not because they wished to, but because defiance carried cost. Poseidon tested this first. Storms grew violent. Seas rose higher than before. Ships vanished beneath waves that felt personal in their cruelty. It was a reminder, subtle but unmistakable, that the sea still held power enough to challenge the sky. Zeus responded, not with war, but with warning. Thunder answered the waves. The message was clear. Balance would be enforced. Hades remained distant, yet his silence spoke volumes. The underworld expanded. The rules governing death hardened. Souls were judged with increasing precision. Even immortals felt the shift. Death had become orderly, and order, once established, is difficult to escape. Among the lesser gods, fear settled quietly. The age of unchecked behavior was ending. Olympus no longer rewarded chaos, it punished it. The court of the gods became a place where words mattered more than weapons, and alliances were forged through caution rather than trust. Zeus understood that peace among immortals could not rely on affection. It relied on predictability. Every god needed to know the limits of their power and the certainty of consequence. Authority, when consistent, becomes invisible, and invisibility is the truest form of control. Yet beneath the surface of order, tension endured. Power divided is power contested. Every domain bordered another. The sky touched the sea. The sea fed the land swallowed the dead. No boundary was absolute, and every overlap invited conflict. The cosmos was no longer at war, but it was not at rest. It was a system held together by vigilance. Zeus ruled from above, watching constantly, aware that a single fracture could unravel everything he had built. This was the paradox of the new order. Stability demanded effort, peace demanded force, and the king of the gods learned a truth that would define his reign forever. Ruling the universe was not about power gained. It was about power restrained, and the knowledge that restraint would always be tested. High above the world, where clouds moved slowly and time seemed to breathe rather than pass, Olympus settled into routine. The war was over. The realms were divided, and yet peace did not arrive in the way one might expect. Olympus was not a home, it was a gathering place, a summit of immortals who shared power, not closeness. The gods did not live as a family bound by warmth or affection. They existed together because the universe required them to. Each god carried their own rhythm, their own purpose. Athena walked the halls of Olympus in quiet thought, her mind always turning, always observing. Ares passed like distant thunder, restless but contained. Apollo brought light and order, while Artemis moved freely between worlds, untouched by the politics of the mountain. They did not quarrel loudly. They did not clash openly. Instead, tension drifted softly through the air, like mist that never fully lifted. Words were measured. Smiles were careful. Respect was shown, but rarely felt. Hera presided beside Zeus, her presence calm and commanding. She understood Olympus better than any other god. She knew that power was not always expressed through force, but through patience, through memory, through quiet endurance. Her gaze missed nothing, and her silence often spoke more than words. Zeus ruled without constant display. His authority was understood, not announced. Thunder did not need to sound for the sky to feel heavy with his presence. The gods knew the boundaries, and most chose not to cross them, not because they feared punishment, but because balance had become familiar. Time moved differently on Olympus. Days passed without urgency, seasons shifted below without notice. The gods observed the world in long stretches of stillness, watching mortals live brief, fleeting lives. Their laughter rose, their civilizations formed, and their prayers floated upward like distant echoes. Some gods listened more closely than others. Demeter felt every harvest and every loss. Hermes carried messages quietly between realms, never lingering long enough to belong. Hephaestus worked patiently, shaping metal and fire into tools that would last longer than kingdoms. Each god fulfilled their role, content in repetition. This repetition was not boredom, it was stability. Yet even in calm, differences remained. The gods were not equal in temperament or desire. Some sought admiration, others preferred solitude. Some watched the world with curiosity, others with detachment. These differences did not disrupt Olympus, but I prevented unity. There were no shared meals filled with laughter, no stories told by firelight. Olympus did not echo with the warmth of family. Instead, it hummed with quiet coexistence. This was enough. Zeus understood that closeness could be dangerous. Familiarity bred challenge. Distance preserved order. By allowing the gods space, by letting them exist without constant interference, he maintained calm without force. And so Olympus endured. Night after night, the stars turned slowly above the mountain. Winds whispered through marble halls. The gods remained awake, yet untroubled. Their immortality stretched endlessly before them, not as a burden, but as a steady continuation. Below, mortals slept beneath the same stars, unaware of the quiet order heaving the sky in place. And as long as the gods remained content in their distance, the world rested peacefully beneath them. As the ages unfolded, order settled softly across the heavens, not as a command shouted into the void, but as a presence quietly felt. Zeus did not rule Olympus through constant judgment or endless displays of power. His authority rested instead in something calmer, something heavier, the steady weight of law. Law among the gods was not written on stone or spoken aloud each day. It lived in understanding, in memory, in consequence quietly remembered. Every god knew the boundaries, not because they were reminded, but because they had learned them over time. Oaths became sacred threads woven into the fabric of the cosmos. When a god swore by the sky, the promise carried weight that could not be undone. Words spoken in sincerity became bonds, and breaking them disturbed the balance of all things. Zeus did not need to intervene often. The knowledge of consequence was usually enough. Justice, under his rule, was slow and deliberate. It did not rush. It waited. When punishment came, it arrived not in anger, but in certainty. This patience shaped Olympus more effectively than fear ever could. The gods adjusted to this rhythm. Disputes were fewer, excess softened. Even the most restless learned restraint. Ares learned when to hold his fury. Apollo learned when to dim his pride. Power remained, but it learned to move quietly. From above, Zeus observed rather than interfered. He watched the patterns of immortality settle into place, knowing that balance required space to breathe. Too much control would fracture the calm he had built. Too little would invite disorder. His role was not to dominate, but to remain present. The sky reflected this balance. Storms came and passed without fury. Thunder rolled gently across distant horizons. Rain fell where it was needed. The heavens did not sleep, but they rested. Below, the world of mortals responded instinctively. Crops grew with greater consistency. Seasons found a steadier rhythm. People prayed not out of fear, but habit, sensing a quiet order guiding their days. They did not know Zeus's laws, but they lived beneath their influence. Occasionally, a god tested the limits, not in defiance, but in curiosity. Each time, the response was subtle, a reminder, a warning carried on wind or wave. These moments passed quickly, leaving no scars behind. Zeus understood something few rulers ever do. Authority does not need to be loud. It needs to be reliable. And reliability, once established, becomes invisible. Time moved gently across Olympus. Days passed without urgency. The gods remained immortal, unchanged, yet shaped by the structure surrounding them. Law did not cage them, it guided them, like stars guiding sailors across quiet seas. Even Hera, watchful and composed, recognized the strength of this calm rule. Order protected Olympus as much as it protected Zeus himself. Without it, even the gods would drift. And so the heavens remained steady. The sky watched. The laws endured. The balance held. And beneath it all, the world rested, held gently in place by rules that did not shout, but whispered, steady, eternal, and unbroken. Hera's presence on Olympus was steady and enduring, like the slow movement of the stars. As queen of the gods, she did not command storms or shape the earth, yet her influence reached into every corner of divine life. Marriage, vows, and sacred union belonged to her, and through these ancient laws, she shaped the order of Olympus as deeply as Zeus shaped the sky. Their union was not born of romance in the mortal sense. It was an alliance older than affection, rooted in tradition and necessity. Hera represented continuity, the binding force that held structures together. Zeus represented authority, the fort that enforced them. Together, they formed the center of divine rule, though their harmony was often strained. The myths remember Hera as watchful and unyielding, and this memory is not without reason. She guarded the sanctity of vows with unwavering devotion. To Hera, promises were not symbols, they were foundations. When they were broken, the balance of the world trembled, even if mortals could not feel it. On Olympus, her footsteps were quiet, but her attention was constant. She observed the gods carefully, aware of every shifting loyalty, every whispered ambition. Where Zeus ruled through law, Hera ruled through memory. She never forgot a slight, nor did she ignore devotion freely given. The stories of Zeus's many unions spread slowly through the heavens and the earth. Mortals would one day tell them with drama and passion, but among the gods, these events were understood differently. Each union carried consequence. Each birth altered the balance of power. From these unions came gods and heroes alike. Athena, born fully formed and radiant with wisdom, embodied strategy and foresight. Apollo and Artemis brought light and balance to the world, one guiding the sun across the sky, the other guarding the quiet places of the wild. Hermes moved between realms, swift and unseen, carrying messages that stitched the cosmos together. Even Heracles, born of mortal and divine union, became a reminder that the actions of gods echoed far beyond Olympus. His labors reshaped the land, calmed ancient beasts, and reinforced the idea that divine power, once released, could never be contained. Hera watched all of this unfold with measured resolve. Her anger, when it appeared in myth, was never sudden. It was patient It grew slowly like roots beneath the earth. She did not act to destroy the order of Olympus, but to preserve it as she understood it. Marriage, under Hera's protection, became more than a bond between individuals. It became a sacred structure mirrored in mortal society. Families formed, lineages endured, kingdoms found legitimacy. Even without knowing her name, mortals lived beneath her influence. Zeus, for all his authority, did not dismiss this power. He understood that law without tradition weakens over time. Hera anchored Olympus to the old ways, to customs that predated even the Titan War. Her presence reminded the gods that immortality did not free them from consequence. Together, Zeus and Hera ruled not as a unified voice, but as complementary forces: sky and covenant, authority and continuity. Their relationship was complex, shaped by tension and endurance rather than harmony, yet it held. The other gods learned from this balance. They understood that Olympus was sustained not by affection, but by roles carefully maintained. Each god had a place. Each myth reinforced that place. As centuries passed, Hera's influence remained unchanged. Temples rose in her honor. Rituals were performed in her name. Brides whispered prayers without knowing why they felt compelled to do so. Her legacy flowed quietly through time. On Olympus, nights passed in stillness. The stars traced familiar paths. The gods remained watchful, but calm. The world below rested beneath ancient laws upheld by divine patience. And so the order endured, not flawless, not gentle, but steady enough to allow the world to sleep beneath it. As the world below Olympus continued to turn, the distance between gods and mortals remained vast, yet never absolute. The immortals watched from above, and among them, Zeus remained the most closely observed. Not because he descended often, but because his actions, when they occurred, left gentle yet lasting marks upon the world. In myth, desire is never hurried. It unfolds slowly, like clouds gathering before rain. Zeus's attention moved across the earth in this same quiet way, drawn not only to beauty, but to potential. Mortals lived brief lives, yet within them burned qualities the gods rarely changed: courage, curiosity, resilience. These qualities caught the notice of the sky. From these encounters came heroes, figures who stood between worlds. They were neither fully divine nor fully mortal, and because of this, they became bridges between heaven and earth. Their stories unfolded gradually, shaped by trials rather than sudden triumph. Perseus was one such figure. Guided softly by the gods, he moved through danger with calm resolve. With Athena's wisdom and Hermes' quiet assistance, he faced the Gorgon not with fury, but with patience and care. His victory did not shake the heavens. It settled gently into legend, becoming a story told beside fires long after his life ended. Another hero, Minos, ruled with laws said to be shaped by Zeus himself. His reign reflected the belief that order could descend from the sky into the lives of men. Justice, when practiced with care, became a divine echo within mortal halls. And then there was Heracles, whose strength was unmatched, yet whose path was heavy. His labors were not punishments meant to break him, but journeys meant to shape him. Each task carried a lesson: patience over force, endurance over rage, humility over pride. His story unfolded slowly across years, becoming one of the longest echoes of divine influence in the mortal world. These heroes did not disrupt the calm of Olympus. They reinforced it. Through them, the gods touched the earth without remaining. Their presence reminded mortals that the world was watched, not abandoned. Hera's role in these myths is often remembered through struggle, yet beneath the surface lay balance. The challenges faced by heroes did not destroy them. They refined them. In myth, difficulty is rarely meaningless. It shapes what must endure. Zeus did not guide every outcome. Fate still moved quietly alongside the gods, weaving threads even immortals did not fully control. The Moirai spun, measured, and cut lives with serene precision. Even the king of the gods respected their rhythm, understanding that order required limits, even for him. As centuries passed, the presence of heroes faded, replaced by memory. Temples were built, songs were sung, names were remembered long after faces were forgotten. Zeus's influence lingered, not through domination, but through story. The sky remained unchanged. Storms still moved slowly across the horizon. Thunder spoke softly in the distance. Olympus watched as it always had, patient and unmoving. For mortals, these myths became comforts. They explained the unexplainable. They offered meaning to struggle, and in quiet moments, they reminded listeners that even the gods once reached down gently and then withdrew. As night settled across the world, the stories of heroes softened into legend. Their journeys ended, but their meaning endured. Above them all, the sky remained steady, holding its place without effort. And so the world rested again, cradled by stories that did not rush, watched over by gods who no longer needed to intervene. Even in ages of balance, stillness is never absolute. Among the immortals of Olympus, time stretched endlessly. And with endless time came moments of quiet testing. Not rebellion born of rage, but uncertainty born of thought. The gods wondered, softly and privately, how firm the order truly was. These moments did not arrive as wars or storms. They came as pauses, as questions left unspoken, as glances exchanged across marble halls where footsteps echoed gently and then faded. Some myths speak of a time when the gods, weary of authority, considered change. Not because Zeus ruled harshly, but because immortality invites reflection. When existence has no end, even stability can feel heavy. Hera, Athena, and Poseidon are said to have once bound Zeus while he slept, testing whether order could exist without its center. The act was quiet, careful, and brief. No thunder followed. No punishment fell immediately. The balance of Olympus shifted only slightly, like a breath held and then released. It was Thetis, gentle and ancient, who summoned Briareus of the 100 Hands, whose presence alone restored the natural order. Zeus was freed without struggle. The bonds were removed, and the gods returned to their places without ceremony. Nothing more was said. This moment did not fracture Olympus, it clarified it. The gods learned that power did not need to shout to remain powerful. Order returned, not through violence, but through inevitability. Some structures, once formed, resist disruption simply by existing. A mother myth tells of Prometheus, who loved humanity deeply and wished to soften their fragile lives. He stole fire from the gods and carried it down to earth, hidden within a hollow reed. Fire brought warmth, craft, and progress. It allowed mortals to shape their world rather than endure it. Zeus did not respond in anger. He responded in balance. Prometheus was bound not out of cruelty, but to remind both gods and mortals that gifts carry consequence. Each day the eagle returned. Each night healing followed. The cycle continued, steady and unbroken. Fire remained with humanity. Order remained with the gods. The world continued. These myths were not warnings meant to frighten. They were lessons meant to endure. They taught that boundaries exist not to punish curiosity, but to preserve harmony. Even compassion, when unmeasured, can disturb balance. Olympus absorbed these moments and moved on. The gods returned to their rhythms. Athena resumed her quiet counsel. Poseidon calmed his waters. Apollo guided the sun across familiar paths. Artemis walked beneath the moonlight, untouched by politics. Zeus did not seek vengeance. He did not need to. Authority restored itself through stillness. The throne remained where it had always been, not because it was defended, but because it belonged. Over time, these stories softened. Mortals retold them by firelight, shaping them into parables. The sharp edges faded. What remained was reassurance that even gods could falter, and that order could survive without destruction. Above the world, Olympus rested again. Clouds drifted slowly past its peaks. Stars held their places. The sky did not tremble. The testing had passed. The balance endured, and in that endurance, the world below found peace enough to sleep, knowing that even when questioned, the heavens held steady. Far below Olympus, the lives of mortals unfolded quietly, measured not in centuries, but in fleeting moments. They were unaware of councils and oaths, of laws spoken among the gods, yet they lived always beneath their influence. The sky watched them gently, not with judgment, but with distance. Zeus rarely intervened directly. His presence was felt instead through patterns: the return of rain, the steady passing of seasons, the slow movement of stars that guided travelers home. To mortals, these were gifts of nature. To the gods, They were signs that balance held. When humanity strayed too far from harmony, the response was never hurried. Myths speak of the great flood sent in an age of decline, when the world had grown loud and careless. Yet even then, the waters receded. Life was allowed to begin again, quieter, humbled, renewed. Deucalion and Pyrrha survived not through strength, but through reverence. Stones cast behind them became new people, gentle and enduring. Humanity was reshaped not to dominate the earth, but to belong to it. The gods observe this with calm interest. Athena watched cities rise, guided by thought and planning. Demeter followed the fields and taught the rhythm of sowing and harvest. Hestia remained still, guarding the hearths where families gathered in warmth and silence. Mortals prayed not only for favor, but for reassurance. In the night, they looked upward and found comfort in the stars. They told stories of gods to make sense of storms, of fate, of love and loss. In these stories, Zeus was not distant. He was the sky itself, constant and unchanging. Temples rose slowly across the land, not as monuments of fear, but as places of quiet respect. Offerings were given with patience. Rituals followed the seasons. Through repetition, belief became calm rather than urgent. The gods did not demand perfection. They asked for remembrance. In remembering, mortals found order in their lives. In order, they found peace. Time passed gently. Generations came and went like waves on a shore. Empires formed and faded. Names were forgotten, yet the sky remained. Zeus watched not with attachment, but with continuity, allowing humanity to grow without constant interference. Even when mortals suffered, the gods did not rush to change fate. Suffering, in myth, is part of the weave. It gives shape to stories and meaning to endurance. The heavens remain steady, offering not solutions, but stability. As night returned again and again, mortals rested beneath the same sky their ancestors had known. The stars traced familiar paths. The moon moved softly through its phases. Prayers drifted upward like quiet breaths. And though the gods rarely answered directly, their silence was not absence. It was space. Space for humanity to live, to dream, and to sleep beneath a watching sky that never truly turned away. Time moves differently for those who do not age. On Olympus, centuries passed like quiet breaths, barely noticed by the immortals who watched the world turn below them. For the gods, there was no urgency, no fear of endings, only continuity. The sky remained the same shade of endless blue. The halls of Olympus did not weather or fade. Marble columns stood untouched by erosion. The gods themselves did not change in form, yet change surrounded them constantly. Below, civilizations rose gently, like mist at dawn, and dissolved just as softly. Cities were built stone by stone, filled with voices and purpose, then gradually emptied by time. New names replaced old ones. New prayers reached the heavens, spoken in different tongues, but carrying the same hopes. Zeus observed this flow without interference. He had learned long ago that permanence does not require control. The world below needed space to change, to learn, to forget, and to remember again. Immortality in this sense was not superiority. It was distance. The gods marked time through patterns rather than years. They noticed the slow shifting of constellations, the gradual cooling of eras, the soft advance of night across lands once filled with noise. These changes were not losses. They were movements within a larger rhythm. Hera remained constant, her gaze steady across ages. Athena watched knowledge gather and scatter. Apollo guided the sun as it traced the same path it always had. Artemis followed the moon, unchanged by the centuries that passed beneath her feet. Even the sea, restless by nature, followed its ancient cycles. Poseidon's domain surged and receded, shaping coastlines without haste. The underworld remained silent and orderly, receiving generations without judgment. For the gods, memory replaced time. They remembered events not by date, but by feeling. The Titan War was remembered as weight, the rise of humanity as curiosity, the passing of heroes as quiet echoes. Zeus carried these memories without burden. He understood that the role of the immortal is not to cling, but to witness, to remain steady while the world shifts around them. As ages turned, mortals continued to look upward. They built stories upon stories, layering meaning onto the sky. Some forgot the old gods. Others renamed them. Still, the heavens remained unchanged, accepting belief and doubt alike. Immortality did not make the gods distant. It made them patient. They did not rush to correct or intervene. They allowed time to do its work, smoothing sharp edges, softening grief, teaching endurance. Night after night, the stars returned to their places. The same patterns guided travelers, comforted sleepers, and reminded the world of continuity. Zeus watched over all of it, not as a ruler imposing will, but as the sky itself, present, vast, and unmoving. And so the ages passed, quietly, gently. The world changed, the gods remained, and between them flowed time, steady enough to carry all things toward rest. As time flowed onward, the presence of the gods settled more deeply into story than into sight. Mortals no longer expected thunder to speak with intent or the wind to carry messages. Instead, they listened for meaning in memory, shaping the lives of the gods into myths that could be carried across generations. Stories became the quiet bridge between heaven and earth. Around hearth fires and beneath open skies, names were spoken gently. Zeus became the voice of the sky, the steady watcher above all things. Hera became the guardian of vows and families. Athena lived in moments of wisdom and careful thought. Apollo echoed through music and light. Artemis walked in forests and moonlit paths. These stories were not always precise. They shifted and softened with time. Sharp edges were worn away, conflicts became lessons. The gods grew less distant, more familiar, shaped by the needs of those who told their tales. In this way, myth did not preserve events exactly as they happened. It preserved what mattered. Mortals remembered not the laws of Olympus, but the comfort of order, not the struggles of the gods, but the reassurance that the world was held by something greater than chance. Myth offered calm in uncertainty, rhythm in chaos. Temples slowly became ruins. Rituals changed. Some gods were honored less often. Others were remembered in new forms. Yet the sky remained. Storms still moved across the horizon. The seasons returned as they always had. Zeus did not fade with belief. He was never contained by it. The sky did not require worship to exist. It simply was. And in that constancy, myth found its quiet power. Even when mortals turned toward new stories, the old ones lingered. They appeared in language, in symbols, in unspoken habits passed from parent to child. The gods remained present, not as rulers, but as echoes. Children learned the stars without knowing their names. Travelers followed constellations laid out long before memory. Farmers trusted the rhythm of the year. All of this carried the imprint of ancient order. Myth became a soft guide rather than a command. It reminded mortals that life moved in cycles, that endings were followed by beginnings, that the sky above them had watched countless lives and would watch countless more. Zeus's role in these stories changed with each telling. Sometimes he was distant, sometimes stern, sometimes protective, but always he remained vast, inseparable from the heavens themselves. In sleep, these stories found their truest place. They settled into the mind like familiar paths, offering comfort without demand. They did not ask to be believed. They simply waited to be remembered. And so the myths endured, not loudly, not urgently. They endured like the night sky, present, patient, and always there, ready to be seen again when someone looked up and wondered. There are moments, usually in the quiet, just before sleep, when the world feels still enough to imagine absence, to wonder gently what might remain if the sky no longer watched, if the heavens withdrew their steady presence. In myth, Zeus was never meant to vanish. He was not a figure who walked away or faded into rest. He was the sky itself, vast, surrounding, and enduring. And yet, stories sometimes invite reflection, not on loss, but on balance. If the sky fell silent, the world would not shatter. It would continue, guided by patterns already set in motion. The stars would still trace their paths. The seasons would still turn. The memory of order would linger like warmth after the sun has dipped below the horizon. The other gods would remain in their places. The sea would breathe in and out. The earth would continue its quiet work of growth and rest. The underworld would receive souls as it always had, calm and unhurried. Mortals might look upward and feel uncertainty, not fear. They would search the sky for reassurance, finding it not in thunder, but in familiarity. The constancy of night, the return of dawn, This thought was never about removal. It was about understanding. Zeus's power did not lie in constant action, but in continuity, in the knowledge that balance, once established, carries itself forward. The sky does not speak often, yet its silence is never empty. It holds space. It allows the world to breathe. In this way, Zeus was not only a ruler, he was a reminder that stability can exist without noise, that presence does not require attention, and that order can be gentle. As the mind drifts toward rest, this reflection settles easily. The world does not depend on force to continue. It depends on rhythm, on repetition, on quiet endurance. Above all worlds, beyond the rise and fall of cities and names, the sky remained. It had witnessed the birth of order, the shaping of myth, and the quiet passing of ages. Zeus, inseparable from the heavens themselves, endured not as a figure of action, but as a presence of balance. Power, in the end, was never the loudest force. It was the one that stayed. The cost of such endurance was subtle. To remain unchanged while everything below transformed required distance, detachment, a willingness to observe without intervening, to allow time to move freely. Zeus did not walk among mortals. He did not seek praise or remembrance. He allowed the world to exist on its own terms. This was the quiet truth of immortality. Not glory, but patience. Not control, but continuity. The gods of Olympus continued in their rhythms, each fulfilling a role shaped long ago. Hera guarded the bonds that held lives together. Athena watched thought and knowledge rise and fall. Apollo carried light across familiar paths. Artemis followed the moon through silent forests. Poseidon felt the endless movement of the sea. Hades remained steady beneath the earth, welcoming the inevitable with calm order. Together, they formed a balance that did not demand attention. It simply held. Mortals slept beneath this unseen structure. They dreamed, unaware of her ancient harmony that allowed rest to come so naturally. The night wrapped around them gently. Stars traced their familiar patterns. The same sky watched as it always had. In time, even the stories softened. Myths became whispers. Whispers became feelings, and feelings became quiet understanding that the world was not random, that beneath uncertainty lay a steady rhythm guiding all things forward. Zeus did not need to act for this to be true. His role had already been fulfilled. Order, once set, does not require constant reinforcement. Like the turning of the earth or the pull of the tides, it continues because it must. And so the eternal sky remained calm. No thunder rumbled, no lightning fell, only the vast openness above, holding space for clouds, for stars, for dreams. This was the final gift of the King of the Gods. Not dominance, but stability. Not fear, but rest. As the night deepens and thoughts begin to slow, the story finds its natural end. The gods remain where they have always been. The world continues its gentle motion, and the sky watches, patient and unchanging. If this story brought you calm, if these ancient myths helped your mind grow quiet, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. More stories will always be waiting, ready to guide you softly into rest. Now, let the sky fade into silence and sleep peacefully beneath it.